and the pigs won't eat it. I know, it's hard to believe. I've seen pigs eat some pretty disgusting things, but for whatever reason, when this gets spoiled, they will not touch it. Must be distributed using an approved feeder. I'll go over what an approved feeder means in a couple slides. And then surveillance is required by the label and for success. This is one I always like to stress on because it is different than most herbicides and pesticides. What the label says is that you have to check the bait site every 2 to 4 days. And what you're looking for at the bait site is, are animals eating the bait? Specifically, are pigs eating the bait? And has there anything been killed by the bait? So you're supposed to look and see, is bait missing? Are things eating it? And has anything died at or near the bait site? What the study told us was that if you want the best bang for your buck, so you want to get the best effort out of this, what you should really do is put a trail camera on the bait site, preferably a cell camera, so that you can see what's happening at the bait site 24/7. That'll really, what they found in the study is that'll really give you the best bang for your buck on using this product. It's labeled for use in pastures, rangelands, forests, and non-crop areas. Do not allow livestock to graze within the baiting site. What they would like to see is they would like to see you remove livestock from the pasture altogether. If that's not feasible, either because your property's not big enough or it doesn't align with your grazing management plan, you can build a fence around the bait site that keeps livestock out but allows the pigs in. And then you have to properly dispose of the carcass in accordance with state laws with their status as free-ranging livestock. The biggest difference, for anyone who's followed this, the biggest difference in the label from 2017 to 2024 is you no longer have a requirement to dispose of every pig you kill. You have to look for every pig you killed. Again, that's why surveillance is so important, because you need to have a roundabout idea of how many pigs are in the sounder that's coming, and you have to look for those pigs and dispose of the ones you find, but you don't have to dispose of every single one. So if some of them go die in thick brush and you can't find them, it's no longer a hit on the label. And please, if there are any questions as we're going through, please stop me and ask, because if you're thinking it, someone else is thinking it too.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
How long does it take for the bait to react?
So for an 88-pound pig, it takes 3/4 of a pound a day for 5 to 7 days to kill the pig. And they have to eat it every day because it's an accumulation of the toxicant. Yes, sir.
You have cost information of what, damages it costs. What does it cost to kill one pig?
So I do not have what it costs to kill one specific pig. I will tell you, Kaput has sent me their study on what it costs. What it costs to kill your very first sounder, according to them, following the recommendation I'm about to give you. So the use of corn and pre-bait and the use of the toxic bait plus their feeder is about $1,800 for the first sounder of 20 pigs and about $900 for every sounder thereafter. So in that first sounder, they're accounting for the purchase of their feeder. And then they average it averages about $700 to $900 depending on how you mix the baits per sounder of 20 pigs going forward. I will tell you, I have not done an analysis of that myself. That is all given to me by Kaput. I think they are being a little generous in the pigs getting the exact amount of dose every day, 5 days straight. I think you are probably going to see it cost a little bit more than, probably $200 or $300 more than that per sounder in reality. But that's the breakdown that Kaput did, and that is the only cost breakdown we have right now that someone actually went out and did. Yes, ma'am.
Going back to what you mentioned earlier about removing the hogs, Is there a standard as to how they should be removed or where they should be taken or how they can be disposed? They can't be left for vultures, that kind of thing.
Oh, I love this question. So, in the state of Texas, and Marcus, are you going to cover disposal at all?
I'm kind of like tab
Okay. Sorry, he's covering laws and regs, and so I didn't want to step on his toes. But, having said that, in the state of Texas, there is technically no laws on the proper disposal of feral pigs. Having said that, there are recommended guidelines. So TCEQ, who is one of the agencies that monitors and governs water in the state of Texas, would like you to dispose of these pigs as if they were diseased livestock. And with that, the regulation is burying or burning. However, I will tell you at the Texas study, the study done by AgriLife, all of those pigs were left for vultures. There is technically no law or regulation that says you have to bury them or you have to burn them. But what I will tell you is that part of the reason we want to get rid of pigs is because they spread disease and they contaminate our water. They can still do both of those things dead. So wherever you decide to dispose of the pigs at, if you can't burn them or you can't bury them, you should at least drag those pigs off to a place that livestock, pets, and little kids can't get to. Because again, those carcasses still carry diseases that can be spread to all three. And the carcasses should be dragged off to a place where they won't get into a water system. What I mean by that is don't dump them in a dry creek bed, where if we get the rains we've been having, all of a sudden it's not a dry creek bed anymore. Don't drop them in a place you know is a recharge area for an aquifer, because those diseases and those contaminants can be brought down through. Don't, put them somewhere where they won't get to pets, wildlife, pets, livestock, and humans can't get to them, and they can't easily get into our waterways. All right, so some human considerations. This is a toxicant. It is harmful if consumed. If anyone doesn't know, warfarin is a common blood thinner used in humans for decades now. So please don't consume it. Store it safely. If you do consume it, you can call poison control. It can be treated by vitamin K1. And then just like any other herbicide or pesticide, when you use it, use your basic personal protective equipment, long sleeves, pants, gloves, closed-toed shoes. There is a dye in the toxic bait that will dye your hands blue if you don't wear gloves. So non-target species consideration. What we're going to talk about here is we're going to talk about what may happen if an animal other than a pig got into the bait. First and foremost, the primary way that this bait kills is through the consumption of the bait. So if you follow the label and do everything the label says, no other animal besides pigs should be able to eat the bait. Having said that, we all know it's not a perfect world. Things happen. And so Kaput specifically made this bait low toxicity. So it is not acutely toxic, meaning it does not kill the pigs on first consumption. It takes several days of consumption to kill the pigs. Some of the studies they did, they found a dog would have to eat 88 pounds of bait in a single feeding, or 13.2 pounds of bait a day for 5 days to get a toxic dose. A cow would have to eat 3,520 pounds of bait a day for 5 days to get a toxic dose. A turkey would have to eat 29.3 pounds a day for 19 days, and a bobwhite quail would have to eat 27.6 pounds to get a toxic dose. So again, because of the fact that pigs are more biologically susceptible to warfarin, and because this should be being fed through an approved feeder, no other animal should be able to get enough of the bait to give it a toxic dose. Secondary toxicity. So we just talked about what would happen if another animal got into the bait. Here's where we're going to talk about what would happen if something eats the pigs that died from Kaput. Again, the primary form of toxicity, the primary way this kills, is through consumption of the actual bait. Warfarin is also a quickly metabolized chemical, meaning the body immediately starts trying to work it out of its system. So what the research shows is there should never be enough warfarin in a dead pig to give a toxic dose to another animal. In the studies they did, they found a 20-pound dog would have to eat 136 pounds of infected liver to get a toxic dose. They then went and they fed warfarin at 10 times the dose of what's in Kaput to rats. It killed the rats. They fed those to magpies, had no effect on the magpies. They fed warfarin again at 10 times the dose to prairie dogs. It killed the prairie dogs. They fed those to European ferrets, had no effect on the ferrets. And then finally they fed warfarin at 5 times the dose that's in Kaput to rats. It killed the rats. They fed those to alligators, and it had no effect on the alligators. So what they found is, again, there should never be enough warfarin in a single pig carcass to be able to pass on a lethal dose to another animal. Safety. So I'm going to get into the Texas study, I think, in the next slide. But part of to be a part of that Texas study, you had to have at least 5,000 contiguous acres. I'm sure everyone in here has 5,000 acres to play on, so this probably won't be a problem for y'all. But they understood that not everyone who used this bait would have 5,000 acres. And so they put a safety in the toxic bait. It's a blue dye. It'll dye the fat, the fluids, and the joints blue within 3 hours of first consumption, and the fatty tissue, the joints, and the fluids will remain blue up to 2 to 3 weeks after last consumption. And the reason they did that is that there's a high likelihood that if you're doing this on 50 acres or 100 acres or even 200 acres, that a pig you're trying to kill with Kaput could die on a neighbor's property. Or you just started putting Kaput out, you're on day 2 of the Kaput, the pig walks over to your neighbor's property and your neighbor shoots him. There's a high likelihood something like that could happen, so they put the blue dye in there so that anyone who opens that pig up knows what's going on. Or at least knows something's not right. So that Texas study, done in multiple regions, 23 sites, 10 counties. The landowners were the applicators, so AgriLife Extension just collected the data. They did it over multiple seasons, and what they found is that it works when used as prescribed. So that feeder, I mentioned before, it has to be an approved feeder. You do not have to purchase Kaput's feeder. You can make your own, or you can modify a commercial feeder. The 2 requirements: it must have at least a 17-pound door, and that door must be able to be kept at half open for the conditioning phase. So if you don't want to spend the money, the Kaput feeders are not cheap. You can, like I said, you can modify a commercial feeder or you can make your own. But it must have that 17-pound door and be able to be held at half open. So pre-baiting. Before I get into the steps of pre-baiting, what I will tell you is that you do not have, the label only requires you to pre-bait for 2 to 3 weeks. That's all the label requires. What they found in the study is that if you want the best bang for your buck, the best effect out of this, you should pre-bait for a little bit longer than that. So you can do this without breaking the label, because you're doing more. So what they did was bait with 100% corn for 1 week with the feeder door fully open. And that's 1 week of the pigs coming and eating from the feeder. So if it takes 4 or 5 days for the pigs to find the feeder, then you need to wait another 5 or 6 days for them to continue eating out of it, get used to coming every day before moving to that next step. And that's going to be the same for all of these steps. What this is doing is getting them comfortable with eating out of that feeder and using that feeder and getting them reliant on coming to that feeder every day. So all of these are going to be determined by the pig's behavior. It's not just a set time frame. It's not, I do this for a week, I do this for a week, I do this for a week, and then I go on to this. It's Are the pigs coming for a week? Move to the next step. Are the pigs coming for a week? Move to the next step. So that second step is going to be bait with 75% corn and 25% placebo for 1 week with the feeder door half open. I will stop here and tell you, you are not required to use the placebo bait by the label. The label does not require you to use the placebo bait. And in fact, if you use the placebo bait, it is going to cost more than if you were to use straight corn. Here's what I'll tell you though, and they found this in the study. If you use 100% corn through the entire pre-baiting and then switch to the toxic bait, there is a high likelihood that the pigs will not eat out of the feeder, or will at the very least be hesitant, and the whole process will take longer. The reason being is that for 4, 5, 6 weeks, you've been feeding them 100% corn, and all of a sudden you put these big blocks of food in there. What that placebo bait does is that placebo is the same shape, size, taste, texture, all of that. And so it gets the pigs used to and accustomed to eating that. And then you can go in with the toxic bait. So that's the second step. You go on to the third step, which is 50% corn and 50% placebo for 1 week with the feeder door half open. And then the last step is 50% corn and 50% placebo for 1 week with the feeder door closed all the way. This is the real, all of these steps are important. If I had to tell you one, this is the real important one right here. Because if the pigs won't operate the door, if the pigs won't lift the door up and eat out of it, then you're going to have zero success moving forward. Successful pre-baiting. Look, yes sir.
So is the reason for the door so like the deer don't open the door?
Yes, so it's so nothing can open the door. The only animal we really have in the state of Texas that would potentially be able to open that door is a bear. I'll tell you that this study was not done in areas that had active bear presence. If you have a property that has active bear presence on it, you're going to really want to think about using this product, because a bear can absolutely get into a 17-pound door. So successful pre-baiting. The pigs are regularly at the feeder. They're actively opening and using the door. You're constantly having to refill the feeder because they're actively eating out of it. And the best pre-baiting they saw in the study were the pigs started living at the feeder. So the landowner would come up, the pigs would lay there, watch them fill the feeder with corn, and then as soon as the landowner drove off, they went up and started eating out of it. So once you go through those steps, you can go to the toxic baiting. You're going to remove all of the corn and all of the placebo, and you're going to fill it 100% with toxic bait, keeping that door closed. And you're going to do this for 3 weeks or until no more pigs are coming to the feeder. And so what I usually tell landowners is that if you decide not to use a camera, what you want to pay close attention to what level that feed is in the feeder. And make sure that you continue to do this until the feed no longer stops disappearing. If you're using a camera, it makes this step a little easier because you're going to see what's happening at that bait site every day. Once you go 2, 3, 4 days without pigs coming to it, it's probably a safe bet to move to your next step. And then the last step, you're going to remove all of the toxic bait. You're going to fill with 100% corn. You're going to keep the door closed, and you're going to do that for about 10 days. And this is really just a check step to check your work. When you get to this step, if you have pigs come and open the feeder and start eating out of it, it means you probably missed a pig during the toxic baiting. If no pigs come, or if pigs come but they don't know how to operate the feeder, that means you killed the original sounder you were going after. So when did it work and when it failed? When it worked, when landowners invested good time in conditioning. So they went through those steps, they did all of those steps, they got the pigs accustomed to it, they got the pigs used to it, and they just really put the time and effort in. When feeders were never allowed to go empty, so I can tell you, especially If you have a 20 pig sounder and a 300-pound free choice feeder, you're probably gonna have to fill that every 3 or 4 days. Maybe more depending on the size of the sounder or the size of the pigs. Checking every 2 to 4 days, checking even more in the early process, using game cameras, and this last one, and I cannot stress this enough, do not harass the pigs at the bait site. So if you remember just about 3 slides ago, I said best pre-baiting looks like the pigs living at the bait site. That actually happened in the study. And the landowner got tired of free feeding the pigs. And he rolled up in his UTV, got tired of the pigs being there, pulled out his gun, started shooting at them. It's been a while since I read the study, but I think he got 2 or 3 of them. The rest of them ran off and they were never seen again. They actually had to close down that study site. That landowner wasted a lot of time, effort, money in this process to get very little effect out of it. I know it can be frustrating. I would hate to have to go up every day for a week, 2 weeks, and watch the pigs as I'm filling up food for them. But if you're gonna do this process, you need to really commit to it and go through it. And then when it failed, abundant alternative feed. So last spring when this came out, we had some really good rains that spring as well across Texas. I actually worked with a couple landowners who were actively trying to do this process, and they could not get pigs to come in regularly to the feeder because there was so much extra food just freeing on the ground. Like right now, probably wouldn't be a great time, depending on where you are in Texas, right now probably wouldn't be a great time to try to start this process because we've had so much rain, there's just abundant food on the ground for them. It's gonna be hard to get them patterned to one feeder every day. Inconsistent baiting, so again, allowing those bait sites to go empty. Lack of conditioning, trying to speed through the process, it'll lead to failure every time. And then the last one, again, I cannot stress this enough, do not harass the pigs at the bait site. Just let them be and trust the process. And then some additional considerations, weather, bait stored in high heat, it might melt together. If it melts together, just chip it back into blocks, put it in the feeder, you'll be fine. Heavy rainfall or flooding can cause the bait to spoil. Once it spoils, the pigs won't eat it anymore. You'll have to clean the feeder out and refill it with new stuff. And then feeder maintenance. No feeder will ever last forever, especially not in Texas weather, especially not when we're using it for pigs. This feeder is what keeps the bait from every other animal. So it is vitally important that you check that feeder, make sure it's working properly, upkeep it, repair it, grease it, make sure that everything's working good every time you're using this. And with that, that is the end of my Kaput Toxicant talk.